What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Court Chronicles pod, episode number 3 of the pod. And I told y'all I was going to be here weekly. I told y'all I was going to drop a podcast episode every Monday. Also, might consider dropping podcast episodes on Fridays as well because season's right around the corner and I kind of want to, do a start of the week, end of the week kind of recap, kind of thing, whatever. So I might start doing that. So if you see me drop an episode this Friday, just know that's the reason why. Also, if I sound a little stuffy, it's because I am. I hate allergies, but hey, I have them. Nothing you can do, right? So let's talk about some of the topics that I have going on because we're going to talk about some Knicks. We're going to talk about some potential future New York Knicks. Talk some Andrew Nembhard and the Indiana Pacers. And then lastly, I will give my NBA award predictions for the season because why not? Everybody else does them. Like I said, season's right around the corner. So it's a good time, I think, to do that, right? So let's start off first topic, which is the New York Knicks. And if I didn't say it in the first two episodes, but I think I did, I am a Knicks fan. And these past two seasons in particular, there have been like high expectations going into the playoffs. I know 2 seasons ago, Randall got hurt, so it kind of tanked the expectations a little bit. That's what made it fun, if you will. But you saw there were flaws within the system of the way things worked on that team. And last season, there were definitely flaws. I know they made it to the conference finals, but I feel like that team could have made the finals if they had the right coach. And not to say Tom Thibodeau wasn't a good coach, he was. But I think there was clearly a ceiling there, and they needed to consider moving on, and they did. And when they did move on, a lot of people were like, oh, why would you move on from the best coach you've had since like Mike Woodson or Jeff Van Gundy? And this is why. This is why. Mike Brown in these first few preseason games, and I know it's preseason, with the principles that he brings for this team in particular, we're going to compare some of this preseason and last season's, like, just the feel of watching this team because I watched almost every game last year and I've watched majority of the preseason this year for the Knicks. And I think offensively they just look so much cleaner on that end of the floor. It's just a different feel. With the Tibbs era, it was so stagnant and ISO heavy. And yes, they were always a good team, but you just could tell it was just too hard to get to where they wanted to go. It was just too hard. It felt like it was going to be. Imagine if they played OKC in the finals. Imagine if they made it past Indiana. I don't even think they win a game. And they have talent to win games versus a team like OKC, but I don't even think they would have won a game. If they won, it would have been one game with the way they were playing. It was so ugly. They were turning the ball all over the place. They couldn't get shots up, early in the clock, good quality looks. Everything was so late in the clock. And when you watch this team in the preseason, it's been just the flow is nice. There's pace, there's space, early shot clock shot attempts. There's player movement. Something that I complained about in the Tibbs era for years because it would get really stagnant, whether that was watching Julius Randle do his thing. Then it became watching Jalen Brunson do his thing. And granted, watching Jalen Brunson do his thing can be fun because he is a talented player, one of the best one-on-one players in the league, in my opinion. But you don't want to see that for, games 1 to 82 plus the playoffs. I don't think that's a smart idea. Plus, I also believe guys like Mikal Bridges will just benefit from this. Mikal Bridges last season was a disappointment. I don't care what the counting stats said. I don't care how many, the couple moments he had in the playoffs that were nice. All in all, regular season and playoffs, he was pretty disappointing. The It just didn't feel like he was comfortable out there. It felt like he had to go do his own thing, and I don't think he's that kind of guy. I don't think he's a guy you can be like, all right, I'm gonna give you the ball, go get me a bucket, unless he's like red hot, for example, like that Christmas game versus the Spurs. I don't think he's one of those kind of guys. So I think OG, hell, I think even Cat will benefit from this offensive system of just getting out running, getting more 3 pointers up. Speaking of getting 3 pointers up, Karl Anthony Towns, I know it's not his motto to get 3 pointers up a crazy amount, but he needs to do it if this team wants to be even more successful. Will he do it? I don't know. But I hope he does. Also, with the whole Mike Brown thing, he's got a new starting five, and he's just more flexible with the rotation, which is something that Tibbs was so just hell bent on sticking to his own ways. Last season, the Knicks starting five of Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, OG, and Cat was nasty. It was one of the worst starting fives in the league. Mind you, this team won 51 games last season, and they had one of the worst starting fives you could throw out there. It took Tibbs until game 3 of the conference finals to finally decide to make some sort of change, and he went with Mitchell Robinson, which seems like is going to be their starting five this year. And I'm not really mad at it. I mean, me personally, I would have leaned into like maybe it'd be a little small, but throwing Deuce McBride in there and then like having Cat be the five, and I know defensively Cat at the five isn't great, but offensively you are maximizing the hell out of that team. And I think offense is the way to go for this team if they ever want to like win a ring with this core. But I don't mind Mitchell Robinson starting. I don't mind seeing it through for a little bit. And like I said, I think Mike Brown is flexible enough with the rotations to the point where, hey, if it's not working and we're in game 25 of the season, he might consider making a change. Something that Tibbs probably wouldn't do the entire year. So that's pretty much it with the whole Mike Brown thing. I think Mike Brown coaching this team is what they needed. I think he was one of the guys I looked at, especially. I was like, look, I know they were looking at a whole bunch of coaches, but I was like, hey, look, Mike Brown's not a bad idea. I mean, I think in Sacramento, the roster was just not good, and they really threw it on him. And yeah, I'm pretty sure he had his flaws. I didn't watch every single Kings game, but that roster had flaws. And they try to make it seem like, they had the Golden State Warriors or something, and they needed to fire him because they were a disappointing team. No, the team was what it was, They were a 40-plus win team, but they never were really serious. And it didn't matter if you threw Tom Thibodeau to coach, Mike Brown to coach, whoever to coach. That team was going to be mediocre at best. So I'm interested to see what Mike Brown does with a team that I think has a high ceiling. I think this is the best year for the Knicks to make some legit noise as a contender since like the mid 90s. And they should be one of the top 4 teams in like betting odds to win the championship this season. They have the pieces. They upgraded little tweaks around with the bench. The core is still really good. Jalen Brunson is a top 10 player. Karl Anthony Towns is an elite offensive machine when he's going. They got the pieces. I'm interested to see what Mike Brown does with these pieces to make it all click and potentially go on a title run come May and June. Sticking with the New York Knicks, onto this second topic. Giannis? Question mark? Like, Shams broke the news that back in August, the Bucks and the Knicks had a small conversation about a potential Giannis Antetokounmpo trade, and Giannis supposedly mainly has eyes for New York in any type of trade situation. But my thing is, I think talking purely Knicks-Bucks trade packages, I think it's pretty obvious that it would have to be like a crazy multi-team deal because New York's assets just aren't good anyways compared to a team like San Antonio or OKC if they wanted to make a run at it. They would need I think they need like 4 or 5 teams, to be honest. Maybe 3. I think most likely it'd have to be like 4. 4 teams to really make like a crazy nice trade that, Jesus Christ, can't speak. That, makes sense for all teams. I think also that like it'd have to happen in the summer. It'd have to be one of these like Giannis demands a trade strictly to New York, and then like Milwaukee obeys his request off of just loyalty. Granted, this doesn't guarantee anything because Damian Lillard requested a trade from the Blazers, loyalty everywhere, and it was clear as day. Yes, he never said, I want to go to Miami, like, in particular, but it was pretty obvious he wanted to go play with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo in Miami. And they shipped that man off to Milwaukee. Granted, wasn't a bad team trade. The Bucks were good at the time. And it made sense to see, Dame and Giannis go out there and try to win a ring. It wasn't like a bad idea. But it wasn't where Dame wanted to go, I'm pretty sure. And look, they moved him over there. So at the end of the day, these teams are going to do what's best for them. And if Milwaukee decides to trade Giannis to San Antonio for a whole bunch of young players, I get it. I won't even be mad. I won't. But all in all, I think Giannis' time in Milwaukee is really coming to an end. Like, I think after this season, unless he goes on like a 2018 LeBron kind of run, he's probably getting moved. He's probably getting moved this summer. Don't know where, but I think it's over. Unless he goes 2018 Braun mode and they go to the finals with him and Miles Turner leading the way, I don't see it lasting much longer because the talent on that roster isn't really that good. And for me to say that, especially with the way the Eastern Conference looks this year, and I still believe that the Bucks aren't really that good, that just shows that, hey, look, they didn't really make that much change for me to be sold on them being a contender. Like, I think at best right now I see them as like a 6 seed. And that's saying something when I'm looking at like the Atlanta Hawks made moves and I think they're better and the Magic are better and obviously the Knicks and the Cavs and yeah, I think Milwaukee's kind of stuck and Giannis is probably getting moved in the offseason. So let's talk about the Indiana Pacers next, which is funny because they're like a Bucks rival, but I think with Tyrese Halliburton being out of the fold, this is the season that Andrew Nembhard has to show you what he can do when he has the keys to the car. I think he's going to be like, the lead guard of this team. And TJ McConnell's out for like a month, so he's going to get extra run, even though he was going to start anyways. But even more minutes now because, let's be real, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I can't think of like who's their third string point guard right now. Now, somebody can probably tell me and, correct me, and I might look stupid, but I can't remember right now who's their other point guard outside of like, Halliburton's out, McConnell, Nembhard. I know Mathurin's he's really a 2, but I can't really think of their other guards. So Nembhard's going to be able to run the show, basically is where I'm getting at. And I think Nembhard really sparked this debate of like, can he run the show or not in the 2024 conference finals where he averaged 21 points a game versus the Celtics. And he basically became the lead guard from the early point of game 2 till the end of that series. But he's also kind of a weird player to like debate when it comes to ceiling because there's a world where he breaks out and, he maybe averages 18 and 20 points a game. But then there's also a world where he kind of just, stays where he's at. And like Pascal Siakam really shoulders the load and Benedict Mathurin has a breakout season. So it's like, I don't really know. But when you look at his stats, he's a high percentile pick and roll ball handler, which is always nice to have. He can score in isolation. We've seen it before. And I think those two things are like good marks for a potential breakout season from a guard, especially a guy that's probably going to get more usage now. But who knows? I think the Pacers in general are probably going to be like a 45 plus win team, even without Halliburton, because I just think, the state of the Eastern Conference and they still have a deep team. I think Nembhard's going to play a huge role in that backcourt, and the Pacers are probably going to be more competitive than some people would think, even without their best player. At best, like I said, probably on the Eastern Conference video I made, I think I could see them being like a second round exit. I don't see them as a conference finals team or a finals team, but they're going to be a tough out for whoever they play because that team is scrappy. They get out and run. They get out in transition. They got pieces. So I think the Pacers are still going to be competitive, and I think Nembhard's going to play a huge role with that whole situation. So let's get to these NBA award predictions because I think the awards this year are tricky in some of these, like, debates we could have for whatever award. I'm going to start from like the lower parts of the awards and then like work my way up to the MVP. And we're going to start with the most improved player. I think, funny enough, that Benedict Mathurin is actually going to be the most improved player. And no, I don't think it contradicts what I said about Nembhard. I think Benedict Mathurin is going to show why he was a high lottery pick. And with consistent time, he is going to, it's like taking a leash off. That man is going to go out there. He's going to get his shots up. He's going to put up buckets. And I think he's probably going to be a top 3 scorer on this team for the entire season. I really like Mathurin's abilities a lot. He's still young, obviously. And this could be a year where he goes out there and he could be the guy averaging 20 points a game. I could see it. I definitely could see it with the way they play to get out and run. He's going to have more time, more usage this season as well. He's not coming off the bench, most likely. I'm assuming he's not coming off the bench. So I'm interested in him. Really, I'm interested in him a lot because I think he's going to have a really good year. And now on to my Clutch Player of the Year award. I got Kevin Durant, and I really thought this one through. I think the Rockets are going to have a good year, but like I mentioned on the Western Conference little preview episode, I think the Rockets are really missing guard play, and I think they're going to be in a lot of tight games where KD's going to have to get a bucket towards the end of the game to get things going, try to take it home, and I think he's going to deliver, and I think he's going to take home that Clutch Player of the Year award. And I know the past 2 seasons has been like Jokic and Brunson really doing what they do, but KD on this Rockets team is going to be needed for them to have like crazy success, especially late in the game, because in the half court, this team struggled last season, and he this season is like their only real half court presence on that side of the floor, on the offensive side of things. So I think they're going to really rely on him to take these games home. I think they're going to be in a lot of tight games because they're not going to be a crazy scoring team. I think the defense is still going to be elite, so they're going to be in those games, and they're going to need a guy. And I think KD's going to be able to do it and take home that Clutch Player of the Year award this season. Now on to the Defensive Player of the Year. I have Victor Wembanyama. I think that Victor Wembanyama, I think he was basically a shoo-in to win the award last season. And he was even competing for the award the year prior. I think this season it's easy. Unless he gets hurt, it's easy. He's taking home the award. And that's no disrespect to Bam Adebayo or Anthony Davis, but Wembanyama is already here. Like, he's probably going to average close to 4 blocks a game. He's going to get like a steal a game. He's going to be out there just the anchor of that defense. He's going to protect the rim. He can switch on to guards if he needs to. I'm not saying he's like elite at it, but he can do it. He's just an easy candidate to pick. I'm not going to sit here and make it any harder. I think Victor Wembanyama easily will take home the Defensive Player of the Year award, barring injury this season. Now, for the Rookie of the Year, I have Cooper Flag. And this one was a little bit harder for me because I like a lot of the prospects in this draft, but Cooper Flag, number 1 pick. I think on this Mavericks team, he's important already, just off the fact that Kyrie's out to start the year, so it's going to be AD, and then he's going to really need to show what he can do in this early stage of the season, and I think he's going to deliver. I think we've seen in some of these preseason games the impact that he's going to be able to have. He's going to get out there and run. He's going to push. He's going to play really good defense. He's going to be able to get some buckets. He has shown some ability to create, and I'm not saying he couldn't create a Duke. He could, but he has shown that, hey, look, he's got some moves in his bag to be able to create at the next level. And if Cooper Flag can continue to show that he can create and get buckets off the dribble and not be only a guy that gets set up by others and that sort of thing, and he can be a guy you can rely on, he's going to have a really good year. I think he's in for a really good season. I think a few of these guys in this rookie class is going to have really good seasons. Ace Bailey, so far in the preseason, like I mentioned, preseason, but Ace Bailey has looked pretty good as well. And maybe he might give him a run for his money, but I think Flag will take it home this year. I think he's going to be a two-way player, and that's going to play a huge part in why he probably wins the award. So for my 6th Man of the Year award, I really had to think about this because the candidates aren't like that crazy to me. And really thinking about it, I'm going to go with Peyton Pritchard again because yeah, he's not starting this season, but he's just going to be like a guy that's going to be used more this year because there's no Tatum. Obviously, he's out for the season. He's going to be relied on to go out there and get buckets when he comes in a game, and probably is. I mean, last season he was really important to their success, and I think this season he's going to be even more important. I think I could see him going out there averaging like 20 points, 18 points, getting shots up. He's really going to be a guy that I think he might be one of their top 3 scorers this year, or top 4. Probably with, like, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Anthony Simons. He'll be up there. And for me, this award was like the hardest to choose from because the candidates, like I said, aren't like special. So it's like him, Nas Reed, Josh Hart was somebody I thought about as well. But I think Peyton Pritchard is going to put up numbers this year, and he's going to be really important to whether or not that Celtics team, because it seems like they still want to compete to some degree. I think he's going to be really important to them trying to compete, and he's going to go out there and put up numbers this year for the Celtics. So I decided to go with him. Right? Feels like a one of those like, oh, I'm gonna just choose the favorite type of choices, but I could see it because of the situation. And now, lastly, let's talk MVP. I want to talk about this because obviously it's the most important award in the NBA outside of winning like the NBA championship and all that. But the MVP, I really had to think about it because I was thinking Jokic again, and I was thinking SGA, but I was like, I'm not feeling the SGA this year. I think he's gonna have a great year, but I don't think he's gonna win the award. Jokic and Giannis was a guy that I was like, Giannis seems like a guy that can win the MVP this year because of everything that's happening with that team. And I'm gonna go with Giannis. I think he is going to have a crazy statistical season. I think he's going to average like 33 points, 34 points, 13, 14 rebounds, 5 plus assists. He's going to be insane this year because he's going to need to like shoulder that load this year for this team. He's going to be probably their primary ball handler. He's going to be important on the defensive end as like a rotation help defender, swinging into the paint, blocking shots in that end, doing his thing, grabbing boards like I mentioned, because Miles Turner is not like the best rebounder for a big. So he's going to be important on almost every aspect of this team. And I think he's going to have an insane year. I think he's going to have one of those, like I said, 2018 Bron kind of seasons. I think he's going to have one of those. Do I think the team's going to go far? Probably not. But I think, like, remember that first round series versus Indiana this year where he was putting up crazy stats, 40-20 games, all that stuff? I think it's going to be a continuation of that. I think he's going to have one of those years where he's just unguardable. Nobody can stop him. It's the best season of his career statistically. I think he's going to have one of those. And he's going to take home that MVP this year, which would be, I think, his third MVP of his career. Jokic was the second option, like I mentioned, but I think it's one of those where Jokic has won it so many times that they're probably going to look to like give it to other guys. Now the window probably opens up for him a little bit more because last season they took the break and they gave it to SGA, and SGA did deserve it. But I think this season the window's a little more open for Jokic to get another one, but I think Giannis will ultimately take it home. The Bucks will probably win like 45, 46 games. And barring injury, like I said before, I think it's going to be the best statistical season of his NBA career, and it's going to be insane. Anyways, that's going to do it. Don't forget to like check out my Twitter, check out my Instagram. You could also check out the podcast on all the platforms, whatever you take your podcast in from, whatever, right? Nasty closing to the show. But yeah, don't forget to be on the lookout for an episode on Friday because I might drop one. And recently these episodes have been coming in at like 25 to 30 minutes. I'm going to probably try to keep it that way for a little bit longer until like it starts to get more traction, and then I'll go out there and maybe start going for like some hour-long episodes instead. So that's probably the goal with this whole thing. But yeah, going to continue to put out content, going to continue to stay consistent, and be on the lookout for Friday, just in case. This has been the Court Chronicles, and I'll see y'all in the next episode. Peace.